All right, welcome back to the Atlantic Strong podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Dickens, and tonight I have Lucas Chapman, who's a multi-ply powerlifter from, you're from Halifax.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Halifax.
So Lucas, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Um, I've had the Watsons on before, talking a little bit about multiply powerlifting and conjugate training and everything. So I'm glad to have another equipped
One of the few
powerlifter.
multi-ply guys left. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, let's start at the start. You've been competing for a long time, but let's go back before competition. When did you get into weight training?
um, I say around like high school. I just started at like a local YMCA, and me and my brother would go early in the mornings before school, and then we would after school we'd come home and we'd have a little chin up bar and dumbbells and stuff, and we just do bicep curls and chin ups for a couple hours before when we got home from school. And I mean, it just continued from there.
Yeah. So how old are you now?
I'm 26.
Um, according to Open Powerlifting, which is where I get all my information, you started competing like in 2012.
Yeah.
So you've been competing since you were 18.
Yeah.
Were you always in equipment?
No, my first, I think my first meet in Amherst was raw, and then I also did a push pull down in Maine, but that
Right
was
on.
just yeah.
So actually, you and your twin brother and your sister all train and compete equipped.
Yeah.
Did you all start to get into equipment at the same time?
No, well, actually, just started almost a year ago now. So me and Nick kind of convinced her to jump on the train, on the multi-ply train. So
Right on. So how long into your training before you started getting into using equipment?
I'd say after that first full power meet, I was like, well, I don't really want to compete raw anymore. Because and when we went down to Maine, we seen all these guys in multiply shirts like my size benching 500 pounds, and I'm like, I want to get into this. I want to bench more than just 230 pounds. So I said, screw raw and let's go multi. Plus, most of the gym where I was at in Amherst was multi-ply lifters anyway. So I mean, it was an easy switch.
Yeah, was that the Amherst Powerlifting Club?
Yeah, it was.
Was your twin brother training with you at the same time?
No, I was the one who convinced him because he was still training at the Y and stuff, trying to be a bodybuilder for a little bit, and I convinced him to come down. And because I was there, I'd say 2 or 3 months before I finally got him to come down and train in Amherst. So
Right on. So how long were you able to train at the Amherst Powerlifting Club before it closed, I guess?
um hmm, I'd say well, I've been in Halifax for almost 4 years now. So I'd say probably 4 years ago was when the last time I got to train there. So
Okay. So obviously, I mean, training at that gym, the barrier for entry for you for getting into equipment was pretty low because that's where kind of all the equipped powerlifting was going on in the Maritimes.
yeah, I mean, like a couple of my training partners, like Stan Wilban and a couple other guys, already had like shirts that they're like, here, try this on. This might fit. This might fit. just pretty much just threw any piece of equipment that didn't fit them or they didn't like, and they just gave it to me, and I learned from there.
Right on. So at that time, were you training, with an experienced group of guys that already had an established, training philosophy, and they did this on this day, and they got into their shirts X amount of weeks before competitions, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, like we sort of did um mostly Conjugate for a bit, but we also we did some programming from Brian Carroll and Dave Hoff and
Yeah.
a couple other lifters. So we kind of tried things for a bit, and if that didn't work for the group, we try and switch up things around. But
So when you went to do your first competition in gear, what was it? What was that like going from raw uh, to adding all that extra stuff in a competition? Because it's not just about, what a lot of people don't know is it's not just about going out and lifting in the gear. There's a lot more nuance to the timing of the other lifters in your flights, and
yeah,
when do you put the straps up, when do you get your wraps on, things like that. So what was your first equipped competition like?
it was kind of a whirlwind, but with that, it was there was a couple also lifters from New Brunswick, but they don't compete in powerlifting anymore. I think his name was Henning Metz. He helped me and my brother in the warm up room, like with gear, like how to set the shirt right and stuff like that. And I mean, it was kind of tough because I was still kind of learning like what was good for me, like if putting the straps too tight or how I should step, if I should pull my collar down super low or twist my arms on my vent shirt. It's kind of just like just go and do it, and we'll go from there.
So now, after having done all these competitions equipped, do you have a set philosophy on competition day of, so it's you're doing squats and you know exactly how many lifters ahead of you when you start to get your suit ready, and then X amount of lifters when you get your wraps on, things like that?
Yeah, it's like you want to get in your gear as early as possible. So I mean, like, we'll obviously start with the bar, and then once I'll get to about like 500 in my briefs, and then I'll put my suit on. It's like some lifters or some people who aren't as experienced in multi-ply, they'll wait until they get up to like 70, 80, almost 90% to put everything on. I mean, like, your suit could be too small, could be too big, sometimes doesn't fit right after a weight cut, and like you don't know how that's gonna affect you if you just wait till the last minute to put everything on and get everything ready. So it's better just to feel the groove and feel how the suit's fitting you that day, and then you kind of have a idea of what you're gonna hit. Because I mean, like, if I put my briefs on like in November and they just slid right on, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm obviously not going to be squatting 7 today. It's going to be a little bit less. So
Yeah. So with the briefs of the suit, because I know that, I can't, I've squatted in wraps a few times, and I have to do my wraps and then get right under the bar, or it's extremely uncomfortable. My feet start to go numb pretty quick. In the briefs and the suit, are you able to just chill in that for a little while, or is it?
yeah, it's like I usually just put the straps down and just pretty much lay back with my knees straight and just relax. I mean, there's no point in getting yourself like amped up when you're like 4 or 5 lifters out. I mean, you have a minute, so might as well use all that time.
Yeah.
People are sometimes like rushing to the bar, and I mean, yeah, it might seem like a minute goes by super quick, but I mean, you have time.
Yeah.
I mean, a common error that I seem like most lifters do is like they just rush up to the bar and try and set up super quick when they're like, okay, like I have time, I can set my straps how I like it, and I can get underneath the bar and under my own time. But
Yeah, that's been my problem even just in wraps is I get the wraps on. It's obviously super uncomfortable. And then I rush my squat setup. And the last time I squatted in wraps, I almost went arse over tea kettle backwards because I set up too fast, popped the bar off the hooks, and then stepped back too fast.
yeah, I mean, like, uh, especially in multiply wraps, well, in my opinion, wraps don't really give you a whole lot anyway. I mean, you have, especially if you're in a, like a canvas or a poly suit, I mean, that's doing most of the work for you. Wraps are
Yeah.
just there, I find, just for like knee stability and maybe like helping you straighten your leg out. So, I mean, my brother likes his knee wraps like super tight. Like he once wrapped Matt Watson one time when we were all squatting together, and 2 days later, his legs were still purple. So,
See, I've only self wrapped so far in Cerberus rebounds, which are pretty not a very stiff wrap. So I don't even think I've hit the tip of the iceberg as to how tight I can
no,
get a
I mean,
stiff wrap.
yeah, I have a pair of overkill wraps that are like super thin, like thinner than I think any knee wraps that I've seen. And I mean, they cast like, it's just like wearing like I mean, they cast super well and they have tons of pop out of them. But I mean, I barely only wrap them like 50%.
Yeah.
I don't really go anything above that. Cause I mean, I really want to feel my feet when I get up to the bar. I can barely feel my hips or, like the bar on my back when I have my straps up. So I'd like to feel something.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that, with wraps, I don't see myself competing in powerlifting again anytime soon. So, if I go and do a single on squats, I'm just doing it for me anyways. And I find that getting up into those heavier weights, I feel safer in wraps than I do in sleeves.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there was a lifter, well, he's raw now, but he was a multi-ply lifter out in Calgary. He said that when he would wrap his knees, he would walk around the monolift once and then squat. And then when he was done, he'd walk around again just to get used to the feeling of having wraps on all the time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that might work.
Yeah. I'm going to get into wraps more often now. I think I really like that feeling of security and safety, especially at the bottom, because uh, my descent is pretty fast. So sometimes I hit the hole with a lot of weight. I feel like my knees are just going to explode
Yeah.
in sleeves, but I don't feel that way in wraps.
Yeah.
I feel very secure in wraps, and I'd even like to get, eventually I'd like to get a pair of briefs.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mark Bell sells those neoprene like sort of material, like knee wrap briefs, and I think
Yeah,
Spud Ink sells something similar like that too. So I mean,
that's what I was
something
looking
easy
at.
you can just slip on. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't have to be super aggressive briefs, but I mean, a little compression will help.
Yeah, I was looking at the Spud Ink ones. They seem to be like the go-to beginner briefs that everybody
Yeah.
recommends.
Yeah. I mean, I started off in triple ply metal briefs, so I mean,
So you went from raw right into multiply. There's no stop in single ply.
I mean, I had my first set of equipment, which I mean, which I think, yeah, I still have. The bench shirt that Catherine was using at the meet was my old single ply shirt my first single ply shirt, and I think I still have my old briefs kicking around somewhere too. So that fit me at 181, which won't fit me anymore.
So what weight class are you competing at now?
242. But I mean,
42.
I'm like I'm a little heavier now, like 240, but I was around like 230, 235. So, I mean, there's no point in cutting weight unless I was trying to go for a national record or something like that. I'm like, I don't think I've ever really cut weight for meat. If I made weight, I stayed in that category. If I didn't, well, I guess I'm in the heavier weight class. I didn't really worry about staying in a certain class just to compete. I was just like, well, am I stronger? Okay, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think at the local or even regional level, there's really no reason to cut weight. Um, unless you're eyeballing some sort of national record, or in the CPU, the weight that you sign up at is the weight that you have to compete at.
Oh,
You can't show up and weigh in a pound or 2 pounds over and go,
yeah.
okay, well, I'm not competing at 260, I'm competing at 260 plus. They go, oh no, you can't compete today.
Wow.
So that's like, you need to look at, okay, what's my weight going to be on comp day? Because if I'm not that weight, then I don't get to compete, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not sure if it's the same with the WPC, but I mean, if it's just a local meet, as long as the um, meet director doesn't mind, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't really see a problem with it.
yeah. The WPC, I really like their setup. I can't see that being an issue in the WPC meet. If you show up at 278 and you'd sign up for 275, they're not going to tell you can't compete today. You just compete.
Yeah.
You just compete at 308.
I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy weight cuts in my years, especially like when I wasn't competing in Amherst. Well, my brother and I and Corey Farrell and Jeremy, I forget his last name, would load and spot pretty much every Amherst meet that we ran out there. So I seen a couple. They were waiting outside of the gym in their car. Mind you, it was summertime. They had sauna suits on, and the heat was cranked, and they looked like they were like dying in the car.
Yeah, I used to, a long, long time ago, I did a little bit of MMA fighting, and seeing the weight cuts. I fought at heavyweight, and I always kind of walked around right at the top of the weight class. I never really had to worry about it. And seeing some of the weight cuts that guys are making, 15, 20, 25 pounds, was just ridiculous to weigh in and then go fight another person the next day. I
Yeah,
mean, the most I did 12 pounds. I did 12 pounds in 2 days, but I was 270. So it was like, that's not a whole lot of weight
yeah.
relative to where I was at. But, you get, I saw guys that were fighting at 155. I
Oof.
walked around at 180 2 days before.
Wow.
Talking
Yeah.
25-pound water cuts. It's crazy.
I mean, a couple top level guys like Kalen Razanen, he cut from, I think he was like 220 or like 230 or some around that range, and he cut down to like 198 or 181 to break the world record. And I'm like, how do these guys, I mean, like, yeah, they have IVs and like, but still, like, that's a lot of weight to cut. And then especially like with in gear, it's like, well, how do I know like my gear's gonna fit the same? It's like,
Yeah.
if I cut all this weight and I put it back all on my, and it doesn't redistribute the same way where I want it to, like my gear's going to be either way too tight, and I mean, like, and I'm screwed. If I can't get in my squat suit, well, I mean, I'm not competing that day.
Yeah. I mean, you look at like the IPF is a 2-hour weigh-in.
Yeah.
So they're cutting weight and then competing 2 hours later. That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you had to do a significant weight cut in the IPF on a 2-hour weigh-in, I mean, for no money, for no anything, just for a record, that doesn't seem worth it to me, but I guess it's worth it to some people.
Yeah.
But most of like, the WPC is the WPC 24-hour weigh-ins.
Yeah. 24-hour weigh.
Yeah. So, your current training style, obviously anybody that follows you on Instagram or on Facebook knows that you train conjugate style. So let's talk about that a little bit. Right now, where do you get your programming?
I'm coached by Tyler Roy. He trains at the Doghouse with the night crew with Dave Hoff, Anthony, Olivier, and Alex Kovac, and all those guys. He holds, I think, the world record for junior at 198 with like a 900 squat or something like that. So
Anthony Olivier, he's the
guy who runs
trigger warning guy.
Yeah,
Yeah. I follow him on Instagram, and since I started following and paying attention more to more of these multiply conjugate guys, I've started to actually see what the workouts consist of. And Anthony Oliveira, he'll put workouts on
yeah,
Instagram to follow.
yeah.
And there's actually a lot more volume, a lot more rep work than I thought was really involved in the conjugate style.
I mean, like, yeah, you have your dynamic effort or max effort work, and then you might have like a secondary movement, and then after that, it's all like supplemental, like pretty much bodybuilding stuff, like single joint exercises. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's where you're gonna really build like your strength. It's like, yeah, you might get good at like if you squat, bench, deadlift every day. Yeah, you're gonna get good at it, but like it's also gonna beat you up. That straight bar like destroys shoulders. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice like it's nice to use the straight bar every once in a while, but I mean, like if I had the choice, I don't think I'd use a straight bar for at least until like 2 or 3 weeks till I compete. I mean, it's not that hard to get back or get comfortable with the straight bar again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I was having some shoulder issues, and I switched to, well, first I switched to a Duffalo bar, and I got an SSB, and even just taking 3 or 4 weeks off of straight bar squatting cleared up all the shoulder and elbow issues I was having. And so now I'll cycle it in every 3 or 4 weeks. I'll get rid of the straight
Yeah.
bar and do just a safety squat bar. The other thing that I've been doing lately, which has been really big for me, is using lifts that force me to use less weight.
Yeah.
So, instead of doing low bar squats, I'll do front squats, or I'll do deficit deadlifts, and
Yeah.
not going heavy on those main lifts all the time, and backing off and using stuff that forces me to use less weight as I feel a lot better than I had
Yeah.
before. And I mean, looking at the conjugate style, you do a lot of things that will lessen the range of motion. And yeah, you get to use more weight, but using a shorter range of motion beats you up less than using the full range of motion.
Yeah, exactly.
And people might not understand. They see, oh, okay, so if I'm a 600-pound deadlifter and I do 6-inch block pulls, I can do reps at 700 pounds, but that's still not beating me up as much because it's a shorter range of motion.
Yeah.
So the programming you get from Tyler Roy, is it just you, or does your whole training group take that
I
program?
mean, like what Matt and Sarah said, like Saturdays we usually like all squat or do like speed work together. So I mean, we usually just message each other through the week and be like, hey, what are you doing this week? Like, see if it lines up, see if it doesn't. I mean, like, I'll usually if it doesn't line up, we just usually like Matt and Sarah will both squat together and I'll load and spot until they're done, and then they'll do the same for me. I mean, it makes it so much quicker and really helps with the team aspect. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be a pretty big portion of equipped powerlifting and people that train conjugate is there always seems to be a pretty big team effort, group effort
yeah,
involved. Way more than seeing some of the raw, even big time raw lifters or even single ply. I mean, you look at the guys doing single ply right now that put out a lot of stuff on Instagram that you can actually see. Blaine Sumner trains by himself. His
yeah,
wife gives him lifts off and stuff like that, but he's mostly by himself. And even
yeah,
Bryce Krawcheck, he always seems to be kind of by himself.
yeah.
There's not that big team aspect to it.
I mean, that's what also when I was in Amherst training together, like we had a group of, I don't know, at least 10 guys that we trained with like on a weekly basis. So, I mean, you had to help. It wasn't just oh, I'll just do my workout over here. And I mean, like if you wanted to be part of that group, you had to put in your time. You had to help out. You had to wrap knees. You had to set straps. You had to know how to load, know how to spot, know how to give out bench handoffs. It wasn't just you just sat in the corner and waited for your turn. If
Yeah.
that happened, you get kicked out.
So you squat or did speed work on Saturdays. What is the rest of your week usually laid out like?
Sundays is usually speed bench, and then Mondays or Tuesdays is speed deadlifts or a heavy pull, like a max effort pull, and then Thursdays is a max effort bench. So
Right on. And doing that conjugate style, you're cycling through a wide array of what is your main movement on any given day. Except for it seems like the speed pulls. Do you run your exercise for speed pulls in like a 3 week wave? Like you're going to do the same the same
no, with
exercise for 3 weeks?
no with Tyler, it's he kind of we kind of move stuff around sometimes because I mean, like I'm in a manual labor job. I'm a truck driver, so I do local delivery. So I mean, my back can be pretty toast most days, and sometimes it's not really feasible for me to go in Tuesdays and do a max effort pull or something like that.
Yeah.
So what he usually does is, I mean, we'll run like 1 day of deficits, 1 week of deficit speed pulls, and then we'll go from blocks, and then we'll do a max, and then go back to doubles on a deficit, and then block pulls or stuff like that. So
Okay. Um, you pull sumo in competition, right?
yeah,
And that's you get, from what I know, is you get more out of the suit pulling sumo than conventional, right?
mm,
Or is that debatable?
it's yeah. I mean, it's pretty much your pain tolerance. I mean, especially in a conventional suit, it's riding right where your family jewels are. So I mean, it doesn't feel that great. And plus, I mean, if to try and get down to the bar in conventional, you kind of have to roll it forward and then grab the middle and then pull yourself down
Yeah.
to both sides and then pull. And I mean, there's not really a whole lot of guys that have the time and patience to do that. And plus, I mean, if you don't get yourself in a good position, you look like a cashew and
Yeah.
it just ends pretty bad.
So how much of your regular training do you pull conventional?
I mean, other than rack pulls, and I mean, a couple weeks ago I did a block pull. I mean, very rarely.
Okay.
But I
Um,
mean, if in my suit, I pull in a canvas suit made. Well, it's a custom suit made by Jenny Phillips. She lives
She's in New Brunswick, isn't she?
Yeah, she's in New Brunswick. She just lives like close to the border. And I mean, like,
Oh yeah, she's like in St. Stephen.
yeah. And well, she originally made it for my brother. And I mean, once he finished doing the meet at X Conditioning in May, he just sent it down to me and was like, hey, like, I'm not going to be competing for a bit. You might as well use it.
Right
So, I
on.
mean, that's a plus of being a twin. I mean, most of the gear that doesn't fit him anymore, he would just send down to me. So, um, but for the most part, it doesn't really give me a whole lot of pop because I mean, canvas has more stopping power. So really all I use it for is just to keep me in a good position. I mean, it's a little tight on the hips, but I just mostly just use it to keep me as upright as possible. So
Right on.
it doesn't really, it just gives me like in the better position I can be in for sumo, I mean, the better I can pull. So I'd rather be in a better position than have like a lot of pop out of the hole. So
So I did get a couple questions for you off of Instagram, and one of them was, do you see any benefit of conjugate style training for raw lifters?
yes, if it's applied correctly. I mean, like if you're in gear, you're obviously going to be box squatting quite frequently. There's a couple guys like Brian Hill that squat without a box, but he's also done years of training squatting to a box, and finally he just decided, okay, let's take the box away and let's free squat and see how that works. And I mean, it bumped his squat up to like, I think he had the WBO, he squatted like 11 or something like that. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what he did, but and his best squat before that was 1,000 pounds. So I mean, if you can put 100 pounds on your squat by just taking the box away, it's
Yeah.
really beneficial. So I mean, like if you're a raw lifter, I mean, you can still box squat, but I would box squat a lot less and just get used to free squatting all the time. Because I find that like if you're a raw squatter and you do conjugate a lot, you kind of become dependent on the box as opposed to when you're in gear, you kind of have that the biting down on the briefs and the like where it's going to stop you like maybe a couple inches before you get to depth. And I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be. Now I need to stand up. You don't really have that. I mean, you still have sort of like a stretch reflex, but you don't really have that cue of, okay, like this is where I need to be. And especially if you set your box, excuse me, if you set your box a little too high, you'll be stopping like a couple inches below or above parallel all the time because you're just training to that box every time. But I mean, like other than squats, I think that raw lifters would benefit from using conjugate because I mean, like for the most part, especially with pulling against bands and stuff like that, it really teaches you to like accelerate because I mean, most people they miss at the top. So if you're not going to pull fast and keep in a good position, like you're going to get pulled all over the place. So
Yeah, from what I see with especially the speed training and the usage of bands, it's really training that lifting with intent, like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that accelerating right through the top of the lift. And I think anybody can benefit from that, raw or equipped.
yeah. The only problem with like I find with calling it like speed training is like people just well, I mean I've done it when I was training in Amherst. I would just, especially for speed bench, I would just go as fast as possible and drop the bar. And I mean, like, I see a lot of people just trying to move it just as fast as possible. When in reality, I mean, like, yeah, you want to move it fast and with intent, but you don't want to be sloppy with it.
Yeah,
If you're flaring all over the place or your hips are shooting up when you're pulling, like I'd rather see someone drop the percentage, like maybe 5-10% and make it look perfect or as closely you can as perfect, than try and pull like and like make yourself almost get into those bad habits of trying to be too aggressive all the time.
Yeah. The other question that we had came in from an anonymous poster, and they said, "Is it true that you sandbag in training?"
Yes. I mean, like, recently when when I started with Tyler, he's been a lot better for calling me out and like telling me like, hey, like you need to push a little harder, you need to do like you have a couple more like pounds in the tank. Like it's hard when like I mean you still want to get those PRs all the time, but I mean like for me it's like, yeah, you might want to go for like a 20-30 pound PR, but like do you really need to? Just because you like should doesn't mean you really have to, right?
Yeah.
You can take that 5 pound PR and say, okay, that's good enough. Because I mean, like, especially like I find like when some lifters have to like hype themselves up all the time and like get to this certain adrenal like response to, go for a new PR. Like when I go for most of the time when I go for a PR or go for a max lift, like even Matt said this too. He's like, he's joking around. He's like, not really. I mean, he's being intentional with his lifting and stuff, but like, he's not yelling and screaming. He's not putting any unnecessary, energy releasing out other than trying to lift. Like
Yeah.
when
I
you
mean,
try and max it out all the time, you get to a certain point and you're just like, nothing I can do now will top that.
yeah.
And I mean, then you're going to start to decline. And I mean, yes, it's easy to take those 5 pound PRs, but I mean, like if those 5 pound PRs add up over time, like, I mean, I'm sort of an older lifter, even though I'm still pretty young. I'm 26. So, I mean, it's just the point of like keeping that constant progression.
Yeah.
So like 5 pound PRs will add up over time.
Yeah.
And especially
Exactly.
if you can keep healthy and like you can pretty much beat your competition by everyone else either hurting themselves or, becoming bored or, they can't see the progression anymore and they just give up. So
Yeah. And I mean, there is, there is a certain, there's certain aspect of attrition in powerlifting where, you can just kind of outlast. If you can outlast a lot of the other top lifters, you can get to the top. And I mean, the biggest, the one that I see now is Ray Williams. Ray Williams is chipping away at his own record, 2.5, 5 kilos at a time,
yeah,
but he's not getting hurt. He's not getting hurt and he's hitting nice squats every competition. And I mean, yeah, 5 pound PRs. I'll take a 5 pound PR at 4 a.m. listening to the CBC any day of the week,
yeah,
5 pound PRs and rep PRs without getting all amped up, without getting hyped up, that's as fatiguing as the actual lift to me. And I just can't do it on a normal day, going and get all amped up, hyped up, and blast music at 5 a.m. just to hit a 15 pound PR instead of chipping away at a 5 pound PR that is going to add
yeah,
up over time, like you said.
yeah. I mean, like you can save that for like meet day, get a little
Yeah.
more amped up, but I mean, that's meet day. Conditions are a whole lot different than when you're just training.
Yeah. And I mean, in strongman, been talking, because I'm hosting this competition coming up. I've been talking to a lot of novices, a lot of people that are new to strongman, and I find that it's way more amplified than powerlifting in the send it factor, because it's, there's rep events, there's time events, so it's like you save up that energy for competition day and just let it fly, especially on rep events,
Exactly.
where a lot of getting hyped up and mental focus will get you through a rep event, more so I find than a one rep max event. Yeah, like save that stuff for the platform, chip away little PRs, rep PRs, and save your energy.
And I mean, too, you can count like technique PRs. Like, yeah, you might not have hit. You only might have hit like the same weight or only a little bit more, but your form was better. You didn't flare as much. You didn't good morning it. You actually stayed upright. I mean, like you see some of these, like I call them like, well, flash in the pan lifters that I've seen like over the years that are great for 2 years, and they just try to keep those big PRs, and then they're just gone in a flash. Really, the only really predominant raw lifter that has really lasted over all these years is Alex Charchuk.
Yeah.
And I mean, even him, he has to like wave down. I mean, he does a lot of like rep training and stuff, but like he'll drop a lot. I mean, you can't be 100% all the time. Like, and some lifters think that, oh, I need to be strong like all the time. I mean, like you only have to be strong meet day. That's all that matters is meet day. It might be great that you like pull the big PR in the gym, but that doesn't matter. What matters is meets. If you want to be a competitive powerlifter, meets are what matters.
Well, and what I have been telling myself, especially, is there's more metrics than just the weight on the bar. Like, yeah, did you lift more weight? But there's also, did you do more reps? Did you do more reps and sets in less time? Did you move the bar faster? Did it feel better? Like you said, I'll take hitting, a 500-pound triple on squats. I'll take that if I know that I moved the bar faster and I felt better doing it. I'll take that as a win, even if it's just matching the previous PR.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's more metrics than just the weight on the bar. The weight on the bar only matters on meet day.
Yeah, because I mean, especially when you get older, and I mean, like, there's going to be a certain point when you're not going to be able to hit those big lifts anymore, and you gotta, especially if you want to keep in this long term, you have to set like small goals and be like, okay, like I did this, or this move better. Like you said, like you have to, if you really like, there comes like, I've had it before where like I just, well, for a little bit I didn't compete for a while, and I was like, nah, maybe I'll just train, and like I didn't really have that drive to really compete anymore. And then my brother got back into training, and I was like, well, you know what, let's do it. And then I helped and went to a couple meets. I was like, well, you know what, and I got the fire back. So
right on. Well, we've been talking for about 45 minutes. I think that's a good place to call it. I find sometimes these things get away from me because I could talk about training all night, but I get an early morning, and you've got to work tomorrow, so we'll
I've got an early morning too.
So we'll call it there for the Atlantic Strong podcast. Luke, thanks for coming on and talking some multi-ply and conjugate.
No problem.
And hopefully we can have you on again.
Hopefully. See you later.
Thank you very much.
Bye.